All right, it's Thursday morning. It's not Wednesday morning, so we moved today. It's Garland Nixon and Scott Ritter. Let's talk. Good morning. It's Garland Nixon, Scott Ritter here. Let me start by reminding everyone that you can go to scottritterextra.com. That's right, scottritterextra.com. Scott does a lot of good work. And of course, the man's got to feed his family. He's got to keep the lights on. So go there and make sure you do everything you can to contribute to the cause and help Scott Ritter keep going. Also, you can see everything scrolling across the bottom here, rockfin.com/Garland Nixon. Make sure you go there. Costs nothing. Zero. Sign up there in case they throw me off YouTube. You got a place to find Scott and I. And of course, if you choose, you can become a subscriber. It's $14.99 a month to help the channel. If not, just sign up. Doesn't cost a dime. And you see, buy me a coffee, Patreon, all the other ways that you can contribute to the channel. Thank you very much. Scott Ritter, let's start here. Ann Applebaum had something to say a while back. Ukraine must win. Ukrainians and the world's democratic powers, good old democratic Ukraine must win. That's as she says, the only acceptable end game. Scott, it looks to me like we may be moving to what Ann Applebaum would see as an unacceptable end game. What's happening? Our patient looks terminal, Scott. I think our patient ain't looking so healthy.
Yeah, I mean, look, Ann Applebaum's been on the wrong side of history on this issue from the very beginning. She is vehemently anti-Russian, extraordinarily anti-Putin, and is totally irrational on this subject, incapable of having an informed discussion. Look, Garland, I have a lot of friends dating back to when I was in the Soviet Union for the first time. These are guys and gals I've been friends with for a very long time. And these are extraordinarily well-educated people who have good hearts. And they're on the side of Ukraine. So I'm not saying that if you're on the side of Ukraine, that makes you inherently evil, stupid, or whatever. No. I think that this is a topic that, depending on what your perspective is, you can articulate on either side. I happen to believe that Russia's on the right side of history here. I happen to believe that the Russians were provoked into this contest. And I happen to believe that Russia has carried out a very difficult task to the best of its abilities, trying to minimize the harm done, knowing that there will be harm done. But people who disagree with me, you can disagree with me and not be characterized as, evil or stupid. Ann Applebaum is not one of these people, though. She is literally evil, and she is. I don't like to use the word stupid. Again, my wife would be very, very upset with me because that's very disrespectful. She's not stupid. She's written Pulitzer Prize winning works. She's clearly intelligent, but she knows this is the thing. She knows what she's writing is wrong. She knows that it's factually wrong. How do I know that? Because I know the facts that she has herself declared herself to be familiar with. And so she is literally writing something that flies in the face of the demonstrated fact-based history of the problem. She is an ideologue. She's not a historian. She's not an analyst. She's somebody who has bought into a politically motivated position and now finds herself, just like the British government, the American government, Europe, NATO, anybody who's lined up with Ukraine, you find yourself in the uncomfortable position that which you proclaimed must happen ain't going to happen. It isn't going to happen. Doesn't matter. And the Atlantic can give you 1,000,000 pages and you can write until your fingers break. You will never be able to articulate in writing or in spoken word how Ukraine is going to win. It doesn't matter, Ann, that you don't agree with Putin. It doesn't matter that you don't agree with Russia. Doesn't matter because Ukraine isn't going to win. The West has pulled the plug. I mean, it's not even that Ukraine's on life support anymore. The U.S. Congress and the House, the Senate, and then the president have all just secretly agreed to look at each other. And they pulled the plug on life support because there ain't no money coming to Ukraine. What little money Ukraine gets is actually going to make it worse. And everybody else out there who is supporting the blue and yellow or the black and red, depending on your political affiliation. For instance, Germany, they're going to throw away another $8 billion worth of stuff, in an economy that's faltering, a military that's already shrunk and been decimated, but they're going to give away 10 tanks. But these aren't just any tanks, Garland. These are literally the Leopard 1. Now, notice there was some argument early on about should Russia give the Ukrainians the Leopard 2A4 because it's not as good as the 2A6, which isn't as good as the 2A7 that's in German inventories. And they're like, if we give them the 2A4, we might be giving them an inferior product that will burn. Well, it does burn, just like the 2A6 does, and the 2A7 will if they ever go to war. No, Garland, they're getting them the 1A5. Okay, we're going backwards in terms of quality here. And so it's just literally a death trap. Germany has given Ukraine 10 1A5s, Leopard 1A5s. That is a death sentence for the 50 Ukrainians who will be manning these tanks. The good news for these Ukrainians is that these tanks may not pass muster, meaning that they've had to be refurbished, rebuilt, and even at the point where the Germans want to give them to the Ukrainians, they still may not work. So that's a blessing in disguise. But that's where we're at right now, Garland. That's where what Ukraine is reduced to. Getting literally, this isn't like me visiting your home on the Friday or Saturday after Thanksgiving. You know what's going to happen, Garland. You're going to sit down, open up a refrigerator, and out comes the turkey, and you're going to carve up a turkey sandwich. We all do it. Been there, done that. And actually, it's one of the best sandwiches in the world because it's really, really good. But that ain't what's happening here. It's not like Europe said, hey, Zelensky, sorry you missed Thanksgiving, but here's the turkey sandwich. No. This is a week later when we open up the refrigerator and go, ooh, that turkey's not doing too good. And we throw it in the garbage and we take the garbage out for the garbage men. And somebody comes by and goes, Zelensky, reaches in and grabs a handful of this rotting putrid crap and goes, this is all you got left, buddy. That's all that's happening here. Ukraine has lost. Now, I also often tell people, because they're going to point to the fighting on the front line and say, well, it ain't over. No, it ain't over. Ladies and gentlemen, when Germany launched the Ardennes offensive in December of 1944, it was a last gasp gambit to break through British and American lines, to drive to the port of Antwerp and to disrupt this war on the Western Front in a strategic fashion. And they put all their strategic reserves into it, and they failed. At that point, with the destruction of the German strategic reserve in the West, with nothing left, the Allies went on a general offensive. And you could say that the war was over. Everybody knew it at that point in time. That happened in December, early January. By February, March, we had forced the Rhine River. And by April 1st, we were pushing into Germany proper. Literally, the war is over. 1 month left of a defeated, decimated Germany. Garland, you know what the deadliest month was for American forces fighting Germany in World War II? It wasn't Normandy. It wasn't June going in over the beach in Normandy. It wasn't earlier in Italy, the battles in Anzio and such. It wasn't the battles for Sicily. It wasn't the battle for France. It wasn't the Battle of the Bulge. The deadliest month was April 1945 because the Germans were kicking and screaming. They weren't going down easy. It was a fight, a bloody fight. So when I say that Russia has won and people try to point to the battlefield, don't do that. Don't try and say because Ukrainians are killing Russians and Russians are killing Ukrainians that the war ain't over. The war is over. The strategic balance will never be recovered by Ukraine or the West. Russia is producing 1.5 million artillery shells a month. A month. I just want to point that out. Ukraine is firing 5,000 to 6,000, 7,000 rounds a day. Germany's giving them, as part of this $8 billion largesse, 1,500 shells. Not even enough to meet the call for fire schedule by 12 noon on one day, meaning Germany just gave them a morning's worth of fire, and that's it. Borrell has just come out and said, we can't supply the shells. The United States can't supply the shells. And even if Europe and the United States get it all up and running, they can't meet the requirement of the reality of war. Russia is pumping out 1.5 million a day. Now, I could be wrong on that. That could be a month. It might be a month. A day is a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
I'll put it like that. If you're on the receiving end of those shells and you're running out, and they got a lot of, let's put it this way, one side is running out and the other side's got a hell of a lot more than they actually need on the day-to-day
It's 1.5 million a month, but still, that's a whole bunch of artillery shells, and the other side's got nothing. And we're seeing that with tanks. Literally, they're running out of tanks. Every day you look at the counter battery fire that the Russians are putting out there, and they're knocking out 10 to 15 Ukrainian artillery systems, a wide variety of artillery systems. They're using drones. The drones are dominating the battlefield. The Ukrainians can't shoot down the drones. This is over. Now, you still got to put boots on the ground. I interviewed some guys that are fighting in Advika right now. Man, Garland, the story's on both sides, because first of all, I'll say this for these guys. They talk about the Ukrainians like men talk about men. You know, and if you and I went out and got in a bar fight, and it's like the boy named Sue, you know,
right
between the eyes, went down to my surprise. He'd come out with a knife and cut off a piece of my ear. That's sort of what's going on here. The Russians are hitting the Ukrainians are coming up, and they're fighting and fighting and fighting. And what they all say is, you know why the Ukrainians fight so hard? Because they're Russians. It's the same genetic material, the same stubbornness, the same I ain't going to surrender even when the going gets bad kind of stuff. And when they tell these stories about the fighting, it just literally brings tears to your eyes, because you recognize the humanity, the heroism, and the absolute waste of everything that's going on every single day. War ain't easy. Just because Russia has won doesn't mean its victory is going to be easy. Those Ukrainians are tough. They are tough sons of guns. And the Russians got to still go dig them out, even though the war's been decided. They got to dig them out, and they are. And it's just horrific. It's gut-wrenching. It's a story that needs to be told so people can understand the absolute horror and futility of war. You know, we sit back here and we chuckle, and I'm as guilty of this as anybody when we say about Ukraine's on life support, chuckle, chuckle, pull the plug, chuckle, chuckle, because in some ways it's fun to embarrass the Victoria Nulands and the people who have promoted this war. They don't deserve any sympathy. But the Ukrainian men that are dying, and there's, yes, some surrender, some don't want to be there. Even the ones that don't want to be there, though, they fight. They fight. They fight hard because they're Russians. They're Russians. They come from the same stock. And these guys you don't want to get in a headbutting contest with them, because they won't quit. They won't quit. They will just keep going and keep going and keep going, even when there's no hope. They will keep. I told the story of a guy who spent 5 days in a position that was supposed to be held by a unit. All his other guys were killed or wounded. And if he gave up this position, this is a Russian, if he gave up this position and the Ukrainians retook it, then the Russians would have to launch another attack and lose another 20, 30 guys to take it. 5 days by himself, attacked 24/7. He lost an eye early in the battle. He was shot through the leg, shot through the body. They resupplied him with drones. So he ran out of ammunition. So they flew in a drone and dropped him ammo. They dropped food. They dropped water. For 5 days, this guy held out, fought back the Ukrainian attacks before he was finally evacuated and sent for treatment. And what they tell me is this happens every day. They have a mortar commander. The guy was sitting there firing his mortar rounds, and the Ukrainians do their counter battery, and they set the gunpowder, because the way the Russians use mortars, they don't have the pre-manufactured rings that we use in the West. Mm-hmm. They have bags of gunpowder that they literally tie together. And I've seen guys make fun of them. Yeah, be on the receiving end of that fire and make fun of it if you want to. But it's there, it gets hit, and it's on fire. And if it goes up, everything goes up. This guy went in, this commander, to save the lives of his men and to save the combat capability unit, and he scooped that gunpowder up with his bare hands and arms and took it away, and he burned 40% of his body. He wouldn't go on air to talk to me because he was embarrassed because of what the burns had done to his face and his body. I'm like, don't be embarrassed, dude. That's a mark of heroism. But the point is, every day this is happening. This isn't just people getting hit and dying. These is acts of humanity, acts of heroism on both sides, on both sides. This war sucks, Garland. This war just truly sucks because these are guys, if they could take the dedication that they've shown in fighting this war and apply it to civilian life, these are the guys that build the monuments. These are the guys that build the skyscrapers. These are the guys that teach children in schools. These are the guys that make society succeed, and they're bleeding out on the ground in Novaya Russa, in Ukraine right now, on both sides. This is so devastating for both Russia and Ukraine because the best that they have is bleeding out, and it just sucks. But to get back to the geopolitical thing, Ukraine's lost this war, and Ann Applebaum is someday going to have to be sitting down with Victoria Nuland and with all the other ambassadors and all the Fiona Hills and all the cheerleaders, the Jake Sullivans and the Antony Blinkens. And they're going to be sitting down in their MIT forums, in their Harvard Belfer Center forums, and in various think tanks. And they're going to be talking about this, how this happened, when the fact is they should be talking to a jury begging for forgiveness because they are all criminals. The blood of these Ukrainian and Russian heroes is on their hands. And if there was any justice, they would be found guilty, put up against a wall, and fed bread and water for the rest of their life.
There we go. Appropriately dealt with. Let's put it like that. They would be dealt with appropriately in a manner in a just and manner. But
just and judicious manner, yes.
Yeah, there we go.
In keeping with the laws and humanity and
law,
all this. Yeah.
Yeah. Just like Nuremberg. At any rate, that's what they did. They dealt with people, and they found a rope, and at the end of the rope, they believed that there was justice at the end of a rope at that time. All right, so let's move on. Kiev, dude. I mean, you know what? Like me, I was like always, basketball is like my favorite sport. Football is my favorite sport to watch. Basketball is my favorite sport to play. I played in high school, community college, all that stuff. Loved basketball for years. Played in leagues and pickup games, you name it. That was the thing I got my exercise, right? One thing I always knew, if you're playing and you see the other team start arguing, hey, why didn't you pass me the ball? Hey, you're not playing defense. Hey, and now they're arguing. It's over. You won. You won. You're going to win. Once they start arguing, just finish the game out. You are guaranteed to win, right? What's going on in Kiev right now? There's Time magazine articles going on about Zelensky. There's the discussions of what's going to happen with Zelensky. It seems to me Zelensky better either get the hell out of town, or he ain't going to have the opportunity to get the hell out of town soon. But it seems to me that this thing is rotten. A fish rots from the head, right? This thing's rotten at the head. Kiev's indeed. You can't have a war. To me, you can't prosecute. What will the men on the field, on the lines thinking? Well, unfortunately now, and women on the lines thinking when they find out that their so-called leaders are beating the hell out of each other, both in the media and in some instances blowing each other up, Scott.
Well, it's interesting because you're talking about two dueling magazine articles. The first, I think, was an interview by Zelensky with Time magazine. It's an interview that's based upon when a Time magazine journalist followed Zelensky when he came to the United States and did his tour that culminated in the infamous Canadian moment of applause, shall we say. Then he went back to Kiev and spent another week with Zelensky as he ruminated and fumed about what had happened. And it came across that, he basically the gist of the article is that nobody believes in the Ukrainian victory like Zelensky believes in the Ukrainian victory, but Zelensky is delusional. And even the Ukrainians around him say this man is delusional. He's not listening to anybody. He is totally committed to this this narrative, and this narrative is not fact-based anymore. He has this messianic personality now. He believes that he is the Messiah and that only he can solve this problem, but it's a problem that can't be solved. And he's getting increasingly angry as nobody returns his calls, as no money's coming in, as nothing's happening. Then the Israel conflict comes up and he's totally shut out. So you've got that article. And then you have an interview by General Zaluzhny in The Economist. And what's interesting is his choice of journalistic outlet, because it was an Economist interview roughly this time last year where Zaluzhny said, I can beat these guys about the Russians. I can beat them. I really can. I got a plan. And then he told everybody what the plan was. We're going to go through to Melitopol. There's only 84 kilometers. Now, I'm not a rocket scientist, but if I put a pin in Melitopol on a map and I stretch out 84 kilometers and move it along the front line, I find the desired axis of advance. And it goes through Tokmak, Robotyno, Tokmak, Melitopol. And you go, well, that's where I'm going to stack my defenses. But Zaluzhny is the general. He knows best. So he said, this is where we need to go. This is the direction we need to attack from. And then he said exactly what he needs. I need 300 tanks, 500 infantry fighting vehicles, 500 artillery pieces, ammunition, some training, and you give me not a couple brigades, I'm talking 9 to 12 brigades worth of troops, and I can do this. And guess what? He got 9 to 12 brigades. He got 12 brigades worth of troops, equipment, 300 plus tanks, 500 plus artillery, infantry fighting vehicles, over 500 new artillery pieces, lots of ammo, and he launched his attack. Now, he was saying that he was going to take Melitopol. I mean, that's what the whole thing was. I'm going to take Melitopol. But gosh, 5 months into it, and they've advanced, 10 kilometers, at most 17 kilometers in one area, in the wrong direction, by the way. It's not 17 towards Tokmak, it's 17 in this direction. And they were losing all that territory. They lost all 90,000 men, all of them, all 300 tanks, all 500, more than 500 infantry fighting vehicles, all the artillery. It's all gone. It's been erased. So now Zaluzhny's saying, I made a mistake. But notice how he's rewritten history. The mistake I made, he said, is that I believed that I could inflict such horrific losses on the Russians that they would have no choice but to buckle, but to quit. He stopped saying that he actually thought he was going to take Melitopol, split the land bridge, and threaten Crimea. That was no longer in his vocabulary. It was now that he was committing to a war of attrition. And this is where it gets sort of stupid, Garland, because that the attacker always needs at least a 3-to-1 advantage, or probably a 5-to-1 advantage if you're going to prevail on the battlefield. And the attack, why? Because you're going to suffer more casualties than the defender. So if you're taking an inferior military position, which in terms of size of military and ability to replenish, why would you want to enter willfully into a war of attrition against a larger enemy with more troops, more equipment, more ability to? So the story makes no sense. But now he's reinventing history, and it's sort of pathetic because he says, "Well, it failed." Well, no kidding, it failed. The Russians didn't suffer anywhere near 90,000 casualties in this last battle. Since June through now, the Russian casualty figures are classified, but Putin has alluded to 10-to-1. So that's 9,000. That's a lot of guys, Garland. I'm not pretending that it ain't a lot of guys. It's a lot of guys. But the Russians have 300,000 mobilized guys to draw upon. They have 300,000+ new volunteers. They have about 200,000 new contract soldiers. They ain't running out of men. Their army's getting bigger. Their defense industry is pumping out material all day long to resupply this effort. Ukraine's got nothing. Zaluzhny admitted. But now what he says is we're at a stalemate. I'd like to talk to Zaluzhny about his stalemate this time next month to see just how much it was stalemated. Because it ain't a stalemate, Zaluzhny. You lost. Straight up lost. And you don't have anything left to stabilize the front. And you see the Russians now have gone over on the offensive all along. This is what you and I talked about all summer long was going to happen. It's happening right now as we speak. Now, how did the Messiah respond to this? Because the general hath spoken. It's Zaluzhny. He's the general. He's the guy, man with the plan. And Zelensky would go, it's not a stalemate. No, I am the Messiah. And I am here to tell you that it's not a stalemate, that we retain the initiative. And he continues to order the Ukrainian troops forward. in certain areas. Keep attacking, keep attacking. So whatever Leopards, Bradleys, and Strikers they have left are just getting burned up again on the Zaporizhian fields outside of Robotyno. At some point in time, now we see a split because Zaluzhny is contradicting the leader. This is political. Anytime you have a military guy openly contradicting a civilian leader, it becomes political. And now you're seeing the political leadership do things to undermine the general. They're relieving certain officers. They're breathing new life into reanimating corruption charges. Some of these corruption charges may even attach to Zaluzhny. We don't know, but this is all happening behind the scenes. Now, you're a Ukrainian soldier, and you've bought into Zaluzhny as your commander in chief. The generals tend to support him. Now this undermining is happening, and you're looking at Zelensky saying, "You're the guy that made all this happen." What's going to happen here as they start to collapse, as Ukrainian soldiers start to leave the front and they head towards Kiev? Are they going to line up with Zelensky against Zaluzhny? Are they going to line up with Zaluzhny against Zelensky? We're in that kind of mode right now. And again, you and I talked about this. We talked about how you balance the military collapse with the political collapse. And generally, we said that the military collapse should come first, then the political collapse. And that appears to be the model that's happening, but they might be happening sort of simultaneously. Zelensky's in a lot of trouble, a whole bunch of trouble. The kind of trouble that could cost him his life if he's not careful, because this isn't going to be peacetime rules. They're not going to knock on the door and politely handcuff you and take you to a prison cell where you're going to get an opportunity to defend yourself before a court of law. This is Nicholas Ceausescu kind of stuff, where they're going to storm, grab you, have a kangaroo court, throw you in the courtyard, and shoot you. If you guys want to know what the end of Zelensky might look like, watch The Death of Stalin, the movie that was out there, and you take a look at how they play that role where Beria gets killed by Zhukov at the end. That's Zelensky's future. And the best thing that Zelensky could do right now is get on an airplane and get out of Ukraine with his family and never return, and let other people pick up the pieces and see if there's a way that they can bring an end to this conflict in a manner that allows Ukraine to retain as much territory and as much sovereignty as possible.
I think you're right, Joe. And here's the big thing that I saw this morning. Joe Biden apparently has signed a stopgap spending bill. They were, the Congress was arguing about whether or not a government shutdown, whatever the case may be. No Ukraine aid in it. I don't think there's any more coming. USAID, Congress was, barking at them a little bit, saying, "What are you spending all this money for Ukraine?" And USAID says, "We're out. We don't have nothing." Now, the U.S., this is a part of the thing about it. Apparently, they handle the money where the U.S. pays the salaries, the street sweepers, the firemen, the policemen. People don't realize the U.S. pays everything.
Everybody.
Well, apparently, that's about to run out. No more money there. You can't pay the government. Something tells me that government employees ain't going to be all that happy to show up for work and keep the government. So now you're talking economic collapse.
Yep.
You're talking, if they don't get any money, they ain't getting the weapons. You're out fighting valiantly on the field. Hey, hand me another round. We don't have another round. Oh, well, I'm hungry. Send me an MRE. We are out of MREs. We ain't got no food. We don't have any ammo. Does anybody have a white flag? How about perhaps we can stick one of those up, because that's the only option at that point.
We don't even have the ability to launder sheets to make a
yeah,
white
right.
flag
That's
anymore.
right. We can't wash our stuff. Exactly. So the bottom line is this. I mean, the Ukrainians, I hate to bring this back, either they're going to end up fighting with shovels. They'll be the actual shovel fighters, and that ain't gonna work so well. Or at this point, I mean, that isn't even a collapse. When you reach for more ammo and there ain't nothing there, and when you literally are running out of supplies from one end of that country to the other, at that point, they're gonna have to call Russia and say, "Russia, the West has left us hanging. We don't even have food. I can see a day where Ukraine actually says, Russia, you got a failed state on your border. And Russia says, well, we can't have a failed state on our border. We got to at least prop it up enough to that it does, that it doesn't go turn into, Mad Max territory. What do you think, Scott?
Well, first of all, you're 100% correct that that this when this collapse comes, there's going to be a humanitarian disaster, and the collapse could come this winter at the worst possible moment, and that Russia. My prediction is that you're going to see convoys of Russian trucks from the Ministry of Emergency Situations bringing humanitarian supplies into Ukrainian cities, towns, and villages to keep the Ukrainian people alive this winter. That's my prediction. Look, I look at these videos, and again, you got to be careful what you see on Telegram because you just know quality control. You don't know where they're coming from, but there are channels that publish videos that have a good track record of publishing the solid thing. You got pregnant Ukrainian women surrendering now. So that's how bad it is that they not only put women on the front lines, but pregnant women on the front lines. And the Russian soldiers just say, "What are you doing here pregnant? What are you doing here pregnant?" Then they show other videos. The Russians are going through the trench lines that they've, slaughtered the Ukrainians in there. And the guy goes, "These are women. They're killing women in the front lines." And the Russians are just aghast. They're just, you should hear because normally when you see these Russian soldiers going through the trenches, they look at a Ukrainian guy, and they swear at him and sort of like, "You shouldn't have been here. Look at what happened to you now. Da 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 da." And then these are women, and you just hear their voice change. They're just like, "Well, what have we done?" And it's just, oh man, this war is horrible. But that's where we're at, where they're literally throwing women into the front lines now because they've got nothing left. But this economy, this Ukrainian economy, is history. This emergency spending, continuing, what is it, CR, continuing resolution or something of that nature. It wasn't just Ukraine that got carved out. Israel got carved out, and I think the border got carved out. So now they're going to have to deal each one of these separately. And I think what you're going to see is that the Republicans are going to say, we'll give you Israel funding for border funding, but there ain't going to be no Ukrainian funding. That's what they've done. There's three things on the table. One of them ain't getting funded, or if it does get funded, it's going to be very, very little. And the Republicans have a very big interest in the border, and they want funding for the border. Biden and the Republicans sort of would like to get this funding for Israel, but the Republicans are saying you can't have it all, and it's Ukraine that's out. And you're 100% correct. And here's this sad thing too. It's not just that we're just paying the street sweepers and the bus drivers and we're paying the pensions. These are, it's tough for able-bodied people not to bring in an income, but at least they can go out and try to find food, etc. Look, my father-in-law, was raised in the Soviet Union during World War II. He was 10 years old when the war started, 15 when it ended, and he just tells stories because all the men were gone, and so he was the man of the house, and he tells stories of how they had to struggle just to get the bread to survive, but they did it because they were able-bodied. They were able to make that fight. But if you're a pensioner, you're abandoned. There ain't nobody there for you. And if you're the person on social, the social worker whose job is to take care of the pensioner, but now you've lost your salary so that you have to struggle to survive, the pensioner may be forgotten. And there's going to be a whole bunch of 70, 80, 90-year-old people sitting in apartments that are going to be starving to death and freezing to death this winter because there's no one to look for them and nobody to care for them. They're forgotten. And for that alone, I don't want to fund Ukraine, but I have to tell you this. I would support continued funding for USAID to continue to pay the salaries of essential workers so that we don't have a humanitarian catastrophe. Now, some people say, Scott, that's stupid because you're just going to be propping up the government of Zelensky. Yes, you're right. You're right. You're 100% correct. And from a pure Machiavellian approach, I should want to collapse Zelensky and bring him down and drive him out because there is no love lost between me and the Ukrainian government. But the humanitarian in me says we can't let this happen. We can't let this happen. We have to make sure that the helpless in society, those people who need help, get the help they need. And if this requires some balancing so that the money doesn't get diverted for military means, so be it. But man, Garland, if we call ourselves humans, if we call ourselves people, if we call ourselves Americans, we can't abandon these people. We can't. It's a moral obligation.
Let me add this. The neocons aren't human. Look what they did in Afghanistan. You know, I always say you are what your record says you are. Not only did, when they left, which they had no right to be there, they should have left years ago, but they left. Okay. They left, the economy was collapsed, and there was $7.5 billion that was money of the Afghan government. The Biden team kept the money and wouldn't give them their money back. And they were dealing with starvation in Afghanistan. And the world community was saying, you got to give them this money back so that they won't starve. And the Biden team was like, nah, we're not going to give them their money. Iran and Russia and China and these other countries are coming in, giving them food, stopping the country from collapsing. And the neocons not just walk away. They don't just walk away. They literally steal the money. The Ann Applebombs and all these people, they literally steal the money of the people and leave them to starve when they could simply not just, it isn't that we had to vote them money. We take their own money. These people
stole their own money.
Yeah, we stole their money.
Not just that. You remember they had an earthquake, Garland. They had an earthquake just a while ago. So literally houses are falling down around people's head. They're homeless in the streets, winter's coming in, and we don't even have it in our hearts. And remember, these are the people that we claimed that we were all in on. You remember, we're here for the Afghan people.
The women, the Afghan women, we can't have them treated, mistreated. How about that?
You know, the next generation of Afghan. When our lips move as government officials, we're lying because we don't care about anybody. We don't care about the Afghans. We don't care about the Ukrainians. We don't care about the Palestinians. We know that. And I'll give you another news flash, people. We don't care about the Israelis. Not one hoot.
Let me give you another news flash. They don't give a crap about the American people.
Yeah, well,
you know what I mean? No. These people.
Can you blame them?
But you know what I mean?
Did you see this really interesting thing? Did you see the Guardian had been had since 9/11? They had Osama bin Laden's letter to America published on their website, and they took it down. You want to know why? Because in light of what's going on in Gaza today, people are reading that letter and going, bin Laden was right. Everything he says is right. Everything he predicted is right. Every reason he does is right. He was telling the truth. And everybody went, whoa, no. We have lost it. When people are reading bin Laden's letter to America and saying bin Laden was right, we have lost the narrative, guys. Take her down. It's gotten to the point, Garland, where we are so bad collectively, so bad that Osama bin Laden looks good in comparison.
Well, let me tell you this. You better read Osama bin Laden's letter, because what happened was blowback from U.S. neocon policy. And if you think that was blowback, the rage that Osama bin Laden had, the anger that he had was nothing. Look in the streets of America today. I do a radio show. I've told this story. I do a radio show, a number of radio shows, but the one I do on Pacifica in Washington, D.C. A guy had called me a couple weeks ago and said, Garland, you're the reason that Trump won because you wouldn't support Hillary and said 26, going back to that. I'm like, dude, that's a long time ago. I'm like, but okay, you know what? You got your 2 minutes of fame on the radio. Say what you got to say. Oh, he's mad at me because I wouldn't support Hillary, blah, blah, blah. Okay. This was about a month ago. The guy called back in a week ago, and he was diehard Democrat. He says, Garland, I called to apologize. I'm like, what? He's like, I'm the guy that called you a couple weeks ago. The blah. And I said, yeah. He says, you were right. I was wrong. He says, I've been watching this Gaza thing. He said, I'll never vote for another Democrat as long as I live. This is a guy that was carrying anger from me all the way from 2016. In a 2-week period, he did a 180, or as Annalena Baerbock would say, a 360. But you get my point. He did a 180. The anger here is angry. I can only imagine what it is in the Middle East. I can only imagine that there are people that would be more than happy to fly a plane or blow themselves up in the United States. There are people that want revenge. That's a horrifying thing. But right here, Americans are furious at their government, and it appears to me that inside the Biden administration, there are letters, there's cables, people in there saying, hey, man, what we're doing is wrong. We're just killing innocent people. We got to stop that. And these neocons could care less, Scott.
Look, how do you communicate with America? Garland, you're a communicator. You do this show, you do radio shows, you're out there doing public speaking. I've been doing it for a while too. And one of the most difficult things is how do you get into the minds of your average American? Because to be honest, you and I, we, like-minded people tend to gravitate towards each other, and we both have our respective audiences. I think there's some crossover, but these are people who by and large agree with us. But we need to attract in our audience, or at least communicate with an audience that, I'm not saying they have to disagree with us, but people who haven't made up their minds yet, to talk to them, how to convince them. And it's one of the most difficult problems out there. I've tried everything. I've made documentary movies. I do these podcasts over and over and over again. I write. But let me put it this way. I could sit there and write an intelligent article about Osama bin Laden's letter, and it would just go over the head of 9/10 of the people who read it, with all due respect to the people who are out there reading. But how many times does Hollywood make the movie about the happy man and his happy wife at home, and the bad guys come in and they do something stupid and a bullet flies and kills the wife and the kid, or kills the husband and kid in this day of gender equality? And now you have the surviving parent who's mad with anger, and you see it in their eyes. And then they go out and they train, and we're all entertained. We're going, all right, baby. She's with knives. She's shooting great. She's popping. And then she just exacts revenge against everybody. And we're like, it's so justified. It's so justified. It's so beautiful.
The equalizer. Yeah. The
equalizer.
God, something like that.
The equalizer, the oh man. And we're just like, boy, we buy it. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Hollywood. Every day in Gaza, a family is hundreds of families are going through that trauma. Hundreds of families. And if you think that it's okay for an American to get enraged because some gang member killed his family, and now he's going to exact revenge against everybody, and it's beautiful. Why ain't it beautiful for the Palestinians to do it? They've been subjugated for 75 years by the Israelis, an occupier, an evil occupier, now that we recognize what they are. And yet we call it terrorism when they do this, when they exact this revenge. And, we supply the bombs, we supply the airplanes, we supply the money, we supply the green light, we provide we are guilty of the same crimes. And at some point in time, they will come back on us. Now, they can't necessarily reside in America and pop up through the sewers and gun down everybody like they do in Hollywood. They do weird things like hijack airplanes and fly them into buildings, because that's the weapon they can get to do the most harm. And we call it terrorism. Wake up, people. It's called justice. It's called justice. We can call it American justice if it was done in Hollywood, and it's an American. Denzel Washington gets away with it all the time. He's made how many movies like that? Equalizer 1, 2, 3, but he's also done other movies. The Revenge.
Man on Fire. I don't know if you ever saw
Man
that.
on Fire. I love that
movie. They kidnap a little girl and he kills everybody.
Kills everybody because they kidnapped a little girl who ain't even an American. So ladies and gentlemen, please, if I can communicate this, go on a Netflix binge, watch all the revenge movies that have ever been made, and then leave that and say, all that anger that was in that movie towards the bad people exists in the Middle East today towards us, that we have become the target, and they are right in targeting us. They are just in targeting us. And they will exact their revenge on us if we're not careful. It may be too late, because we have done so much harm. This is why diplomats from around the Middle East are pouring in letters to Blinken and Biden saying, guys, we've lost the streets. We've lost it. We have no, there was a time, even somebody like me who's relatively well known in the Middle East, I always felt that I could travel to the Middle East, to Iran. I still wouldn't go back to Iraq because I don't know. But
Right.
I
Yeah.
felt like I could go to Beirut. I felt like I could go to Cairo, and travel amongst the Muslim population and not necessarily fear, because the Islamic world is generally welcoming of guests, and if you come in as a guest, they will treat you very, very politely and very well. But I'm at the point now where civic norms no longer apply, that the desire for revenge, and that people would no longer view me as Scott Ritter, but view me as an American, because I am an American, and they would treat me as every American should be treated at this point in time, and it won't be pretty. I'm nervous for the first time to take an American passport and travel overseas, because we don't stand for too much that's good anymore. We stand for a whole bunch that's bad. In the past, that we could have a debate and discussion that there is some sort of yin yang, black, white, good, evil battle being waged in Washington, D.C. And yes, we do bad, but we're trying to do good. And trust us, we hope the good one's out. That's done. We don't even try to do good anymore. There's nothing we do in the world today that's good. Everything we do is evil. Everything we do is evil. You can't point to one thing where we are truly selfless. There is an agenda behind everything, and that agenda is about getting the world to submit to American hegemony, economic, military, political hegemony. Democracy has been perverted. The very notion of democracy has been perverted. When Ann Applebaum can write an article in Atlantic Magazine praising Zelensky and the Ukrainians as a free and democratic society, when he is banning elections and he rules under martial law, there is no democracy in Ukraine.
Hell, well, I got to add this. You know me, I don't like either one of the parties. I'm an independent. But they got the leading opposition figure in the United States, a guy who leads in the polls right now. They charge this guy with everything but yanking a tag off of his mattress. They have charged Donald Trump with everything they can possibly charge him with. Again, I don't like either one of the parties. But when I look at Biden, I see that the FBI literally covered for him, hid for him, blocked investigations into him, and they charged Trump with everything. I don't have to like Trump to say that is unjust. And the people who want to vote for Trump should have a right to vote for any damn body they want to. And I see a government now that says, if you want to vote for this guy, the government is going to come forward and make sure that you can't vote for him. There was a guy named, I think Victor Medvedev was his name. He was the leading opposition figure. He was polling ahead of Zelensky, and Zelensky locked him up for treason. And I think they ran him out of the country. There's no difference than that here. That's what they're doing to Trump.
Again, I'm with you on Trump. I mean, look, I was never on the Trump bandwagon. The second he came down that escalator in 2015, I went, here comes trouble. And then he opened his mouth, and Garland, you know me well enough that I hate John McCain. I hate him viscerally. I despise the man, everything about him, except when Donald Trump mocked him for being a prisoner of war. I went, you can't do that, Donald. The man was a prisoner of war. And by all accounts, I know there's people out there who will say differently, but by all accounts, what I do know is he was offered a chance to leave Vietnam early because he was the son of the commander of the Pacific Fleet. And he said no, and he stayed there. And I want to ask anybody out there, would you have the courage to make that same decision? It's very easy for us to say yes today, but when you've been tortured, broken, beaten, and you're given the golden ticket out, would you have the courage to say, no, I'm staying here knowing I'll be subjected to more torture? I don't like John McCain, but I would never denigrate what happened to him in Vietnam. And Donald Trump was just damn wrong, dead wrong on that one. He took out he put his sights on a Mexican judge, a Mexican American judge, simply because of his ethnic background. You can't do that if you want to be president. You can't do that if you want to be an American. It's just bad. So I didn't like this guy. I think I said this, I was a Bernie Sanders guy. I'm like, bring it on, Bernie. Bernie's the man. Bernie's going to break it up. Stands for peace. Well, we all know that now that Bernie was a liar. He didn't
Yeah.
stand for anything. And he allowed himself to be mugged by Hillary Clinton and the DNC to steal a nomination that should have been his. He should have launched a revolution that day in Philadelphia and stormed the stage and said, "We're taking over America. Welcome to the new world. We don't accept the elites manipulating. The people have spoken. Hillary will never be crowned queen, and I own the DNC now. Let's rock." He could have done that. I bet you he'd have been president of the United States. Maybe it's good that he didn't, because now we know his true nature. But my point is, when it was Hillary versus Trump, given those two, I picked Trump. Not because I thought he was a good guy. I just told you I disagree with him.
Hillary is that bad.
But Hillary was
Look at
that
Biden.
bad.
Look at Biden. That's what we'd have. If you look at
That's
Biden right now, that's what we'd have got with him.
But if we come down to this point where it's Trump versus Biden, it's not even a question. It's not even a question. It's Trump. But now, and not because, again, I'm out here saying,
right,
oh,
I agree with you.
Things I can say about Trump. No, it's just that I know what's going to happen if we continue Biden. I know how bad it's going to be with Biden. With Trump, I'm still hoping that he might pull a couple North Korea denuclearization initiatives out of his hat that nobody else thinks about. And that was a good moment for him when he tried to.
Well, how about this, guy? Maybe we'll have a chance at least to survive a Trump presidency. Biden, I ain't so sure we survived that. That's how bad it is. But, you know,
they're not going to give us that chance, though. That's the problem.
Exactly.
They're in the process of stealing the choice from the American people with politicized. I'm not saying that Trump is innocent of everything he's been charged of. I damn sure not saying that, because I'm not here to prejudge the outcome of a judicial process. What I am saying is that the charges put up against him are political in nature. That politicians, Joe Biden could be charged on virtually everything Donald Trump has been charged with. We know that Barack Obama could be charged with this. Richard Nixon could have been charged with this and more. There's not an American politician out there who's clean. This system stinks. But to suddenly be very selective, businessman, you're telling me that you're going to charge Donald Trump for pumping up the value of his real estate holdings? Do an investigation on every major real estate holder in America, and they're guilty of the same things.
Me included.
They have with the banks, including Joe Biden.
Yeah, so, me included. If people who sold or bought a house, most likely you're going to try to get every dime you can. And let me add this. In that case, he overvalued the property, they said. But all the loans were paid off. So did anybody, was there, so this is a victimless crime. Supposedly he overvalued it. Oh boy, somebody overvalued property in New York City. Who's ever seen that before? But all the loans were paid off.
Are you ready for this, Garland? I live in Bethlehem, New York. All right. I'll be just dead honest. I bought this house in 2000 for $179,000. And that was a lot of money for me.
Oh yeah.
The town of Bethlehem decided they need to pump up their schools and it's growing, and it's outgrown their budget. So the town of Bethlehem came in and arbitrarily said, my house is now worth $325,000 and I'm paying property taxes on $325,000. And yet if I try and sell my house today, I ain't going to get more than $275,000 for it. All right. So we just sat there, and this happens all over America, where the government overvalues property for the purpose of generating tax income. And now they're going to charge Donald Trump because he overvalued property is what it's worth. And Trump had every right to say, my name alone increases the value. Now, the market might say we disagree, but the market doesn't get to set the price. They can cause.
And the bank gets to give him a loan. The bank could look at it and say, nah, it's not. Yeah, the bank could say, nah, we're only going to lose.
Aren't you supposed to do due diligence? Garland, you want to sell me your 1965 Corvette. I'm not saying you have one, but you want to sell it to me. And you're telling me, hey, man, Scott, it's been in a nitrogen-infused garage for 50 years, and there ain't a spot of rust on it. Walk around, and I look around, and I look at the paint job, and I go, that paint ain't what was on in 1965. That looks like 1999 kind of paint. And Garland, I'm not sure. No, Scott, trust me, mint condition. And this is the price. If I pay the price, shame on me. I should do my due diligence. I should put that machine up on a thing, look under, scratch, all that kind of stuff, and come back, go, Garland, this ain't new. Here's the price. Banks don't have to give you a loan. I've gone into banks and have them tell me, no, we ain't giving you a loan. We ain't going to do it. You're just not. And they run through the numbers and all that kind of stuff. No bank had to give Donald Trump a loan, not a single one of them. And yet they looked at the paperwork, they did their due diligence, or you hope they did, and they gave him the loan. And they got all their money back, plus the interest. They made money. It was a good business deal. What the hell is wrong with the Attorney General from New York? We know what's wrong. She ran on a platform of deplatforming Donald Trump. And this should be rejected, not because you like Donald Trump, but because you believe in justice, you believe in America. Right now, he's the lead. He's the most popular candidate in America today, for better or for worse. He's outpolling Joe Biden. He's definitely outpolling every idiot that's running in the Republican Party. So if there was a fair and free election, and that's a big if, he would win. This is a man that the majority of the American people appear to want to be their president. And yet the Democrats and the justice system is doing their best to deplatform him. Guys, if this happens, it's over. This finishes for this country. We're done.
You know what the interesting thing about it is? And they're charging him saying he tried to interfere with an election. And the charges are interfering with the, how ironic is that? What kind of a paradox do we have? They're charging him in a deliberate attempt to interfere with election, and they're saying they're charging him for you get caught in a paradox and smoke comes out of yours. It's unbelievable. But that's where we are, Scott. The interesting thing about it is when you look at what's happening in Gaza, when you look at the injustice and the violence there, when you look at the madness, what was it? They had a summit yesterday. I don't know if you saw this, the video's out there. They had a summit where President Biden and President Xi met in San Francisco yesterday. So President Biden comes out and somebody asked him, they're supposed to be, repairing whatever. Yeah, that's a whole nother story. But somebody said to Biden, is Xi still a dictator? And they put the video on Blinken. And you could see Blinken like, no, please, God, no, we've done, no. And he's sitting there. And Biden says, of course he's a dictator. And Blinken, just the color drains out of his face. And his hands, if you look at him, his hands are like, oh, geez, what am I going to do? Nobody believes us, the leadership of our country. Nobody takes them seriously. People are furious at them. They think they're crazy people, which they are. And basically, the Biden administration has done more damage in 4 years than I can imagine that any government in this country could do in a century. It's unbelievable, Scott. I know we're getting into politics, but you'll get the last word here.
Well, I'll put it on China. I had a very interesting interview with a Chinese journalist the other day, and let me point this. She writes for an outlet that is considered to be state controlled, so we can say that. She speaks English better than I do. She has a better education, American education, than I do. She is knowledgeable about more American topics than I am, and she's a journalist in her early 30s. The reason why I bring this up is Xi Jinping is surrounded by a team of Chinese diplomats and Chinese academics who are experts on America. They've lived here, they've studied, they speak it, they know it. And if you think that Xi Jinping is going to go, oh, Joe Biden called, God, I can't do my Chinese impression. That'll get me alienated around the world and my wife will kill me. So Xi Jinping, I apologize because he is going to be ruling the world pretty soon. So I don't want to piss him off. But so I'm not going to do that. But if you think he goes, oh no, Biden called me an idiot or called me a dictator. Yeah. I'm gonna throw everything away that we tried to accomplish here, and I'm going to come back and be angry and throw a temper tantrum. No, I mean the Chinese foreign ministry will of course make the appropriate words about this, but Xi Jinping had an agenda. He came here and he put the agenda down, and now they're going to act on the agenda. These are strategic thinkers, but we're not. We have a president who can't even stay on script. And I'm not. Normally, you wouldn't find me being sympathetic to Tony Blinken, but I was sitting there feeling his pain. It's just like, oh God, Tony, everything, because you saw he did a. You know that every once in a while Biden's brain works because he's sitting there talking about Hamas and about potential negotiations about a hostage swap and all this stuff. And he started to go down there and he goes, and I'm going to stop now, Mr. Secretary. I know I'm not supposed to be talking about this. And you can see Blinken like, Whew, dodged that bullet. But a minute later, he's a dictator. Good. All that.
Oh man.
This is just bad juju. The two guys that I dislike very much, but I feel the most pain for, is Blinken and John Kirby. I'm not a big fan of Kirby. He's the White House spokesperson, but you had to watch him on the airplane as he's watching Biden do his last briefing before they put him into a controlled coma. And he's just sitting there, his eyes are just wide, and he's looking over. Finally, turns to the control and he goes, "Please end this now. Get this over with now." Because you don't know. This is the man supposed to be here. And it begs the question, and I'll leave this here. Who's running this country, Garland? Who's running
It ain't Biden.
It ain't Biden. So who's doing it? Who's making the decisions? Who's telling Blinken? Because Blinken ain't running this country. Kirby's not running this country. Who's running this country? And this is a fair question. Is we as Americans have a right to have this answer. I know it's a national security issue if you have a senile president or a president who, because clearly he's not 24/7 there. So at the moments when that famous commercial that Hillary Clinton put out, the 3 a.m. phone call.
Yes.
Oh, great. It's 3 a.m. Who do you want to pick it up? Well, it ain't going to be Biden because he hasn't been injected with whether they inject him with. They haven't. No, and Garden, we can laugh about it, but it's true.
I agree.
No, he is a drugged up human being. They get him amped up so he has momentary, mental acuity to make a statement and a speech. But there's periods of time as he's transitioning in and more dangerously out, because you look at him and you can just see it. I've watched it all the time. He's talking, all of a sudden, and the drugs wear off and he disappears into the void. And that's when his handlers are like, got to get him out of here. What happens 5 minutes later if the phone call comes in saying, Russia's put their strategic nuclear forces on high alert, and Mr. President, we need a phone call right now. Who's going to make that phone call?
Not him.
No, and so have we communicated this to Vladimir Putin so that when the guy who answered the phone or the gal, picks up the phone and says, "Hi, I'm standing in for Joe Biden because, well, his brain ain't working right now," and Putin would say, "Constitutionally, am I allowed to speak with you? Are you really the authority in America?" Ladies and gentlemen, we are living in a moment in time when our government no longer functions constitutionally.
I'll say this.
Some people say ever, but right now we don't have a constitutionally elected executive branch. We have something that's.
I had somebody recently tell me that I think knows they're kind of in a panic in the White House over the Israel thing because they don't know what to do. They're looking at it. Oh my God, this is a mess. This is a disaster. Hundreds of thousands of people in the street. 80% of the Democratic Party, 80% of the party wants a ceasefire. They talk to Netanyahu and the Israelis and they just say, "Shut up. We're not listening to you." They don't. And then they're getting pressure from their right wing saying, "Hey, you got to support Israel." So they're in a tough spot. And as you said, who's running it? They don't know what to do. They don't have somebody there. Sometimes, even if the person is not a great leader, sometimes from the military. I know I was in law enforcement and it's quasi-military. I was a major and something happens. People would look at me and they would say, they'd come to my office, "Major, we had one. One of our officers literally shot somebody. What do we do?" And at that time, I was in a panic. Hey, one of our officers had shot and killed a guy. And I'm sitting here drinking coffee in the afternoon. And they come up, "We've had a shooting." "Oh, what was it?" "One of our officers shot and killed somebody." "What do we do?" I was kind of in a panic. I'm like, ugh. But they wanted to know, what do we do? I had to say, well, first of all, you have to even look like you know what the hell you're doing. First of all, call internal affairs, call this person, boom, contact state police, get a team out there, boom, boom, do this. You get on the, they are looking for you. And once you tell them what to do, everybody scurries off and starts doing it. Yeah. But you have to be able to make a decision and tell people to go forward. You can even adjust those decisions, but you got to be able to say, you do this. They got nobody there.
Right, but Garland,
I don't know. What do you think we should do?
Yeah. They came to you, Garland. They came to you because you were the guy to come to. You were the commander. Now imagine if I came to you, hey, Major Nixon, Lieutenant Ritter, we just had a shooting, and Major Nixon's going, And so Captain Smith jumps in,
Right.
and who I've never met before, and goes, "I'm speaking on behalf of Major Nixon. What I need you to do is X, Y, and Z." I'm going to go, sorry, Smitty, but I don't know you. You ain't in my chain of command. When I look at the people that I take orders from, your name ain't on it. I'm looking for where the mayor appointed you or the director appointed you, where you came from, and you ain't it. No one's going to obey those orders because they don't come from a place of authority. And this is the danger right now. Because let's say you're you're in the Pentagon, and we deal with warlike situations all the time. The Pentagon has to obey lawful orders. And a lawful order can only come from a constitutionally competent source, meaning that the Constitution says this is where you go for your orders, and there is a chain of command. And if the orders are being issued by somebody or entity outside of that chain of command, unelected power brokers who have stepped in to intervene without anybody's permission, who gave them permission? The chief of staff of the Biden White House, because that's what's happening. The chief of staff is going,
Yes.
The dude's incompetent. Bring in some people. Let's get this thing going. That's against the law. We're in trouble. We are in huge trouble right now at this moment in time. You said, Israel told us to stick it in our ear. Man, Garland, I just fantasize sometimes about being a Secretary of State under a president who told me, go fix that. I would fly to Israel. I would invite a televised group. I'd sit down with Benjamin Netanyahu, and I'd start throwing out pieces of paper. First one would be the re-requisition of all F-35s. He goes, what's this? I said, well, those are our airplanes. We sold them to you under a contractual clause. You'll read about it, paragraph 3, that says you can't use them to violate international law. You are violating it. I want them all back. Oh, no, throw back. What's that? All the bombs we gave you. What's that? Everything we gave you. We want it back now. We want to well, you're not going to. What's that? That's a military order that will be executed in 1.5 hours as I leave. And if I don't leave, if you hold me hostage, it's executed immediately. We're going to level your country. We're going to take everything out. We're going to take out those airplanes, those bombs, you, me, the world. We don't care anymore because you don't have a right to exist anymore because you suck. I'd love to be the Secretary of State to be able to tell that to the Prime Minister of Israel on live TV and put them in their place. Who the hell does Israel think they are to dictate terms of global consequence, dictate those outcomes to us, the Americans, who underwrite everything that happens in Israel? Now, Israel is a sovereign state, but sovereignty comes, with that comes responsibility to act within the limits that you are afforded by the scope and scale of your country. Israel is a small country. It has no right to dictate outcomes to America, none whatsoever. And we don't have an obligation to continue to fund this entity, to arm this entity. In fact, we have an obligation to do the exact opposite when this entity behaves in a manner that is in contravention of the very things we claim to support as a nation. The rule of law set forth under our Constitution and under international law. And I remind all you Constitution-loving Americans out there, we signed the United Nations Charter. We made the United Nations Charter. It was ratified by the Senate constitutionally. It becomes the law of the land. Read the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution, people. Refamiliarize yourself with that concept. So you can't say, Scott, we're not going to defend international law. Defend the Constitution. Defend what we stand for as a people. Stand for something, people. Please stand for something. And if you're American, you better be standing for the Constitution and the values that are enshrined in that. And we have walked so far away from that, Garland. It's pathetic where we are as a nation. I apologize for losing my temper.
No, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. I mean, we usually don't get into politics, but it's very obvious right now that the wheels are coming off the cart at 1600. No, they don't have you have a cart anymore. They got no wheels. They got no cart. You got people around who are incompetent, and they are just they're. I don't know where this goes from here, but let's keep our arms crossed, our fingers crossed. That so far, I'll say this: at least the leaders of the Muslim world are showing more constraint, are showing more wisdom than these lunatics that we got running this thing. Because if they are literally containing their population's rage. How long they can do it, I don't know. But luckily for us, they're wiser than the clowns that we got here. Scott Ritter, don't forget everybody. Go to scottritterextra.com, scottritterextra.com for all of Scott's good works. And you can go, when you go there, make sure that you help Scott materially, financially, because look, we do all of this stuff and people enjoy the videos and the writings of Scott and all the things we do. But, you know, the bottom line is this: people got to feed their families and keep the lights on. So go to ScottRitterExtra.com. Make sure you donate, help Scott Ritter keep things going and keep this good work going. You see everything scrolling across the bottom there: Patreon, PayPal, Buy Me a Coffee, Cash App, you name it. If you can afford to donate to this channel, please make sure you share this on all of your social media platforms. Thank you very much. We're out.